Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Golden Eagles Sports Report.
Tonight we'll be discussing Schrader Hall's quarantine, Marquette teams returning to practice, as well as highlighting the exciting news of the return of college basketball. So get ready, Marquette Nation, because Golden Eagles Sports Report starts now.
Slam dunk! Oh, that's a poster. Live from the Jeannie Hayes Virtual Studio at Marquette University, this is Golden Eagles Sports Report.
Marquette gets the rebound, and the champions have gone down.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nick Galley.
And I'm Molly Gretzlock.
With students and athletes returning to campus for the fall semester amid the coronavirus pandemic, many were left with a feeling of uncertainty if in-person classes would make it until Thanksgiving.
And as many predicted, it did not take long before the coronavirus scare impacted campus in a major way.
Last Monday, the university directed all students living in Schrader Hall to quarantine for 2 weeks in accordance with the Milwaukee Health Department. The quarantine requirement started at 10 p.m. that night.
The order came after university saw 3% of the Schrader population test positive for the virus.
Not only does quarantining for 2 weeks affect students' experiences with in-person learning, but it can also complicate an athlete's training schedule as they prepare for their respective seasons.
While Schrader Hall is home to not too many student athletes, there are some that have been impacted. Andrew Muzu has the story.
Last week Monday brought loads of excitement and eager play for many Marquette teams as it marked the first week of practices. However, for second-year student athlete Brian Holland, the enthusiasm to get back into training with his team soon deflated later that day, as he, along with other students in Schrader Hall, were forced to quarantine for 2 weeks.
So I thought Marquette would have given us like a day notice, but they gave us like 2.5 hours notice. And then I was kind of just like, wow, but I obviously can understand because we're all like interacting with each other. And then practice actually started, like official practice started on Monday, the 14th. So there was 1 day of official practice, and then the lockdown happened. So that kind of put like a damper on everything.
After being issued a quarantine by 10 p.m. that night, Holland was not only facing the tough reality of being locked in his room for 14 days, but also the challenge of staying in shape for a sport that requires him to be on the run, literally.
It's already been 6 days since I've ran. This is the longest I've gone in, I think, maybe like almost a year without running. Like to stay in shape, I've been doing like upper body exercises with like bands. I've been doing a bunch of push-ups, doing abs, and I've done stairs a few times, which it's not fun.
COVID nurse and former student of Marquette, Maria Bunchek, agreed with Schmidt in that the quarantine is unfortunate, but purposeful.
Something needs to be done, and the largest demographic from that 2,500 new cases was in the 18 to 24-year-olds. So measures like this are really protecting students and protecting our community, and I'm glad that it's here.
As for Holland, who was the only athlete on his team under quarantine, he still feels confident in getting back into shape.
I still feel confident in myself and like getting back in shape pretty quickly, and also is something hopefully if everybody does quarantining and wears masks and goes through the proper protocols, then it'll blow by in like a few months. But that's a big if people will like respond to this well.
Reporting from Schrader Hall, I'm Andrew Musu, Marquette Wire Sports.
Aside from a few of the restricted players in Schrader, student athletes were able to begin their first days of practice.
For the teams, the first days of practice looked a little different than in years past, as the number one priority is keeping players, coaches, and staff members safe. There are many rules put in place by the university and the NCAA to uphold safe environments for different teams.
Teams are expected to wear a mask during training hours as well as maintaining a social distance. Teams have also held separate group practices in order to reduce the number of athletes training at one time.
With that, we'd now like to welcome in John Leuzzi, who will be bringing some more insights on the first week of practice. Thank you, John, for being here.
Molly, it's great to be back.
Let's get started. You've covered the women's basketball team for some time now. What is the energy like for the squads as they took to the practice court for the first time this year?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the perfect way to put this is when I talked to head coach Megan Duffy a couple weeks ago, she's just getting back to the court with her squad, and she says, it feels like Christmas. And I think that's the perfect way to summarize not only for women's basketball, for all sports in general, but for women's basketball itself. This is a team that's been hungry since how March ended for them. They were supposed to be on for the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, COVID hit that, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, I like that, what she said about being Christmas.
Yeah,
it's
for
definitely
sure.
nice being back, even if it's not practicing. And with that, teams have been operating in group practice sessions, which have resulted in teammates practicing with only a handful of teammates. Do you believe this is something that teams can expect for the rest of the season? And could this hurt a team's chemistry going forward?
Yeah, I do think this is going to be the way of attack for a lot of these teams right now, just because the priority for these teams is to not expose a lot of their players all at once. And yes and no for the team chemistry. I think this is going to bring them tighter together because they know everybody's going to be working together, but they might not have that early chemistry down in the beginning, but later towards the season, I think it'll be down.
And then there are less restrictions for sports that practice over at Valley Fields. How do you think that's been?
I think, all those sports, you have the big fields down there, so soccer or lacrosse are able to go down there and have multiple sessions throughout a day. And I know women's soccer itself, just talking with assistant coach Aaron Scott last week, they're doing 3 days a week down at Valley, and then 2 days they're going to be here on campus working inside the APRC, just doing the strength and conditioning. So they're having split squads there, but I think it's very beneficial that Marquette has this big, wide area that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, that's very nice, especially they can take advantage of being kind of outside. They can kind of social distance a little more. So what are some positives that teams can take away from these changes in practices and how they are structured?
Well, I think it's just the fact that safety and taking care of each other are the most important things right now. But just we're doing the work. It's going to be a process for these athletes to get back into the routine of stuff because they've been away from their coaches and the playbooks and all that for numerous months. So it's a lot of starting from the bottom and then working your way up. But I think it's going to be beneficial for all student athletes here at Marquette.
Yeah, and it'll be definitely interesting for us to see how this all plays out. It's definitely exciting. So thanks again for coming on the show. And when we come back, we'll be covering the exciting return of college basketball. Golden Eagle Sports Report will be right back.
This is the story of a boy who is very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Golden Eagle Sports Report. Once again, I'm Nick Alec.
And I'm Molly Gretzlock.
Now it's time to turn our attention to some recent developments regarding the return of college basketball.
Last Wednesday, the NCAA Division I Council announced its decision to begin the season November 25th.
Now, since most campuses will be student-free due to the extended Thanksgiving breaks, the smaller populations will create a more controlled environment so teams can begin their season.
Now, after an abrupt finish to last season, many Marquette fans are looking forward to seeing the Golden Eagles take the court once again. Tyler Peters caught up with students around campus.
That sound. The one we all know and love. Starting November 25th, Marquette fans will be able to see the Golden Eagles take the court for the first time since March. But it is 2020, so don't expect this season to be a normal one by any means. Fans around campus give their thoughts on what to expect for this upcoming season.
I'd like for them to go to the bubble if that's possible. I think it'd be good for all the fans, and again, like as long as everyone's safe, I think it's good for sports and for the players especially.
Many students believe fans won't be allowed to watch games, at least not in the beginning.
I think for this season it's a long shot. Depending on the vaccine and everything, it's not looking good right now, but hopefully in the future.
Right now, it's just the best to play it safe, just no fans. It just seems like that might just be best for right now. I mean, if there is like a low capacity.
But they are prepared to take any necessary precautions.
Obviously, there would have to be certain guidelines that would go into effect, like if there would be a distance in terms of maybe like 2 seats apart or a seat apart from other fans, or even if they did like a temperature check, or you would have to get tested regularly in order to go to games. I'd be completely fine with that.
No matter what the case is, fans are ready to see both the men's and women's basketball teams kick off their seasons in late November.
I'm very excited. I think if anything, COVID threw a monkey wrench into every team. I mean, every team is basically at the same point. They haven't really practiced that much. Like everyone is on a level playing field right now. I'm gonna definitely say that if there's one season to watch, it's gotta be this season, because it's going to be literally really exciting.
From Johnston Hall, I'm Tyler Peters, Marquette Wire Sports.
And with that, we now want to welcome in the guy you just heard from, the man, the myth, the legend himself. It's Tyler Peters. Thanks for coming on the show.
No place I'd rather be, Nick.
Oh, let's get right into it. So, Tyler, where are your overall takeaways from what the students had to say?
Well, I think they brought up a lot of great points. I know the one guy brought up the bubble idea. I know that's been a rumor that's been going around before this whole announcement of college basketball returning came out. But then again, they seem that they're very patient, and I thought that was something that I thought was mature of them. They seem like they're ready to wait and not being able to go to these games, which is something that I'm sure a lot of fans are anxious to do. But they showed that maturity, which I thought was a great thing. It's good to see that our fellow peers are kind of on board with this and stopping the spread, getting on top of this. But I think once you can go to these games, I think they're going to all be lining up outside of Fiserv Forum, hoping to get in.
Yeah, it's going to be a unique season health-wise. But for Marquette, we got to look at this too. I mean, obviously there's going to be no Marcus Howard. So what will Marquette need to do in order to avoid another disappointing season?
Well, I mean, you lost the best player in the Big East, which is certainly no easy thing to come back from. And last season, their defense was the problem. Offensively, they were fine, but now you don't have that Marcus Howard to back you up. And last year, when Marcus wouldn't have a good game, you saw Sakar or Brendan Bailey, one of those guys come up and have a good contribution in those games. But outside of that, I mean, and both of those players are gone. So now it's like, what do we do? And it's basically going to be starting from scratch for Coach Wojo. It'll be interesting to see. Personally, I don't know if I have much faith in this team. We'll see. They finished 6th last year in the Big East, and they had Marcus Howard, and this year they don't. And yet they do have a relatively good recruiting class, so we'll see what happens with that.
Turning over to the women's side, they made another deep run and made it to the Big East championship game yet again. Do you think the team can repeat the success from last season?
Well, I think they can, and I think you have Coach Duffy, who won Big East Coach of the Year last season. She did a phenomenal job with this team, a team that was expected to finish 9th in the Big East, but they ended up finishing 2nd behind DePaul, which everyone knew they were going to finish 1st, regardless of what Marquette was going to do that season. But I do think that they're going to be a good team this year. They also, like the men, have a good, strong recruiting class. And I think despite losing starters Altia Anderson and Izzy Spingola to graduation, I still think the Marquette women's basketball team is going to have a great season.
Before we jump into the impact of no fans here, Tyler, I want to ask you this. You mentioned Marquette finished 6th last year in the Big East. They lose these key contributors to the team. Where do you see this team finishing right now, especially in a conference that we know has a lot of talent?
I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 6th again, or somewhere around 4 to 6. I'm hoping they get there. I hope that they finish in the top 3. I think that might be wishful thinking. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they finish below 6th in 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. I think it's really just a mixed bag right now. No one really knows what we're going to see, and especially with no fans. I know these younger athletes kind of thrive off of that energy. I'm a former athlete in high school. I know when I saw those fans out there, I got excited, I got pumped up. So it's going to be interesting because we've seen in pro sports, other pro sports, these players have said, it sucks without the fans, but they live on without it. And I think that they play the same. I don't see many differences. But we haven't really seen what it's been like for college teams so far. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens there.
Athlete in high school, huh? We're not going to see you out on the court anytime soon. Pfizer?
No, I can't even. I would airball probably. So.
I mean, hey, you got to give yourself a shot, though.
I guess so. Got to shoot my shot sometimes.
That's all you need to do. And I know if you were at Pfizer, you mentioned the fan impact that they have. I mean, how do you see these seasons play out if there is no fans at Pfizer Forum or at the Al McGuire Center for the women's team?
Yeah, like I said, it'll be something that we'll have to watch and wait and see for, because these are younger athletes, and I know college football has recently started up. Some of their fans have been allowed into those games, but we really haven't seen these younger athletes have to overcome that adversity of not having no fans. And I know that might be a crazy thing to say, because it's like, oh my gosh, just play the game. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it truly does give you that energy, and it sometimes can help you get over the top. So essentially right now, you're looking at no home field advantage for any of these teams. And I think, especially for Marquette, that's going to be something that I think they're going to struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then going off of that, we know the circumstances that are going into it. What would just be some advice you'd give these college athletes getting back into the swing of things?
That's a great question. I would probably just tell them, to treat every day like it's the same, Don't think too far ahead. Take it one day at a time. It's such an old cliche. We hear it all the time, but it's so true. I mean, if you get too far ahead of yourself, you're going to start, burying yourself under this pressure that's just unnecessary. And especially in a time like this, I think mental health is the most important thing, because we're all kind of struggling right now with everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for all the insights, Tyler. Now it's time for another short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at Division I basketball as a whole and the return of college football. So don't go anywhere, because GESR will be right back.
So
great stuff,
I just moved in with his family,
yeah.
And it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Oh, look, a redhead.
Staring contest.
You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
They were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world? You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Touchdown! Oh, did you see that? Whoa, we scored? Yeah, we scored. We're going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Wait, why does my face look like that? I'm playing with these new face filters. Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine. Kevin, I need that back. No. Kevin!
Welcome back to Golden Eagles Sports Report. We're now at the point in our show where we will look at the biggest topics in the world of sports and discuss their impacts. Joining me on our panel is Matt Yazel, Kristen Parisi, and Tyler Peters. So let's get started. We just heard Tyler talk about how Marquette basketball will return and what the fans think. So let's open it up to all of college basketball. What are your thoughts about the return here?
Yeah, I think it's just a great thing for the country in general. I know college football has recently returned as well. I think as you see these sports coming back slowly but surely, kind of brings that sense of normalcy back into society, and I think it's just such a great thing, especially for Marquette fans, Marquette Nation. They're going to get their prime time basketball back. The question of whether they'll be able to watch those games in person or not still remains. We don't know. But I think that's one thing, that one of my biggest takeaways. And then another thing that I've kind of seen is, what's the logistics look like for this? You know, there's still a lot of unanswered questions here. We don't really know, like for Marquette, we don't know if the fans are going to be able to go in or not. And we also don't know, you know, what are they going to do social distancing wise? What's the testing protocol going to look like? Will there be contact tracing? All those kinds of things. So I'm sure we'll get more updates as they come out here soon.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's just great that they have some sort of plan. You know, throughout this whole, quarantine, throughout this summer, there's been a lot of uncertainty in every situation. So I think it's great that they have a date set, they have a plan, and they have something to work towards. And like you said, Tyler, there's a lot of logistics, a lot of things that need to be worked out. But I think just having something to work towards and having a goal set is what is best for college basketball.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm really excited that we're going to be able to see Marquette in action, but I do think it might have been a little too early because, as we've seen, there's so many outbreaks on campuses, and even Marquette alone, we've started to see like a rise in case numbers, but also these athletes are going to classes, they're going to dining halls, they're going around places on campus, so they're still getting in contact with kids who might be exposed, and then they're bringing that back. And that could be an outbreak on the team and on the staff. So it might be a little too early in my opinion, but I'm still excited to be able to see Marquette in action.
It's going to be a unique situation. We're going to have to wait and see how the NCAA handles it, but hopefully they do everything correctly here. We're going to switch gears a little bit over to college football. The Big Ten will kick off its football season a month earlier than basketball, the weekend of October 24th, after the league's presidents and chancellors unanimously voted to resume competition. Was this the right decision? Matt Yazel, I know you are the guy to come to for Big Ten football. Let's hear it.
Well, whether it's the right decision is yet to be seen, obviously, but as it looks right now, I think it's very, very soon. I mean, there's a lot of concern right now about both the universities, these Big Ten universities in terms of the student bodies, in terms of cases of COVID-19, but also just the fact that these athletes now have about a month, less than that, to train and ramp up for a full, physical college football season. And as we're seeing in the NFL, that's causing injury problems. So there's a lot yet to be seen. I think, kind of like college basketball, I think it's great that they have a plan, but also in the Big Ten, they had a plan originally. They shut that down and were saying, oh, we're going to play in the spring. And now it's just that, everybody wants college football so bad that they, brought it back a lot earlier. So it's kind of a switch up on their part, and we're going to see how it goes. But right now it is looking like it's a very early and potentially concerning return for them.
So, well, you're always a guy. You're always a guy for Big Ten football. You never disappoint. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like, what could they have done better in terms of negotiating this plan that you mentioned? They had that one plan where they're going to start in the spring, which I thought was a great idea. I know all these fall teams here at Marquette are doing that. They're going to wait till spring. I don't see the problem in waiting, but the parents, the students, they rushed it. I know I saw some stuff on Twitter. There was a lot of hate going towards all these college football leagues for sure. And but for me, the most concerning thing for me probably is seeing on TikTok these videos of students at these games. Mind you, they're not really social distancing, and they're watching these games, and I sit here and I'm shocked. I mean, I can't even believe it. It's like they don't even know what's going on. They don't even realize that there's a Pandemic, which is, it's really just a sad thing to see, and that's why we still have to wear these probably. But it's just, it's honestly, like you said, I think it's rushed for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the Big Ten I thought they also made the right decision to move it to the spring, and now we've seen Texas A&M, we've seen Notre Dame, we've seen Clemson. They went back early in August, and then they had the outbreaks on the teams, and Notre Dame was looking good, and now they just had to postpone their game against Wake Forest because of another outbreak. So we're seeing that these teams are still having these outbreaks, and then the fans also, as Tyler said, they're at the games, they're not social distancing, so that's going to bring even more cases. And then now the Big Ten has less than a month to practice, and as Matt said, in the NFL we've seen that having less than a month and not being able to slowly go back, making sure that your body is equipped and ready to handle the pressure, it's not ready. So these injuries are going to spice up, and now and then all the kids are going to be mad that they went back, and then the parents might blame it back on the Big Ten. Oh, you went too fast, but then they gave into the pressure at the beginning. So I honestly think it was the wrong decision to start early.
I think you guys all bring up great points. I have to come to you, Tyler. You referenced TikTok. If I ever see you doing a TikTok dance, I will never talk to you again. I'm gonna put it blunt. I'm gonna put it simple. But that's how it's gonna go. Can we all come to a general consensus on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I know, Chris, and you had kind of touched upon this a little bit, the NFL. The NFL this week, I mean, this is our final segment here. NFL this week saw a ton of injuries, countless injuries. Many superstars went down. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I definitely think that we've seen, obviously the Big Ten and college football should have picked up on this, is that half the 49ers starting offense and defense was out in the first half. I mean, Nick Bosa's out with an ACL injury, and we've seen Saquon Barkley, he's out with an ACL injury. And this is why the preseason and offseason training was so important. It's not just for the undrafted free agents or for the free agents that want a spot on the team. It's so that these players can slowly get back into gear and then ramp up as the season goes on. But now, since they're starting way too early, I mean, this is just the start of a big season ahead of injuries, and it stinks for all these players to have to be in quarantine so long. They're so eager to get back in, and then the NFL rushes it. They just say, all right, let's get the season back on. They could have delayed it a little bit like the NBA was doing, so that these players, because the health and the safety comes first, and obviously you can't blame it all on the athletic trainers because the bodies of these athletes were not ready, and you can't even blame it on the fields too, because that's what the 49ers were trying to do, because they said that MetLife wasn't equipped, but then the team was like, it was perfectly fine. So we can obviously see that their bodies just weren't ready that quickly.
No doubt.
And I'll just say, you mentioned the preseason. Obviously they didn't have that this year. As a fan, I don't personally get super excited for the preseason. I don't typically tune in for all 4 quarters of those games, but I'll say, for the players, it's a huge loss not to have those games. Like you mentioned, for the guys trying to make the team, but also just guys that are, ramping up, warming up for, tackling each other, making, football is a very physical and violent sport, and injuries happen, every year, not just, even if you have a full preseason, full workouts, everything, that's just what the sport of football is. But as you mentioned, this season, not having a typical offseason, being inside for a lot of the summer, I think it's definitely playing a huge part of this NFL season.
And you got to imagine this is the same disaster that's waiting to happen for the NCAA as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. The preparation, not having that preseason, I'm sure that's exactly what caused this. Maybe just by the strike of luck that this is why it just happened.
Right.
But it is 2020, so I mean these crazy injuries that are happening left and right. The Saquon Barkley injury, especially that one, to me just looked like it didn't really look like that big of a tackle from the Bears player.
Eddie Jackson apologized to him on Twitter, but it was really for no reason. I mean, it was just a football play.
Yeah, it is just a football play. That's what happens, and it's something as a fan you really hate to see all these elite players go down, and it makes. I don't want to say it makes it less fun to watch, but to me, you lose that entertainment value for sure.
Yeah, certainly an interesting year here. We'll see more of it. But guys, thanks so much for joining us here on the panel tonight. Great discussion. And thank you guys for joining us. That just about does it for us tonight. Be sure to tune in again next Tuesday for another edition of Golden Eagle Sports Report. For Molly Gretzlock, I'm Nick Galley. Have a good night, Marquette.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leah, did you put a new dent in that?
This one? No.
Were you texting and driving again?
Yes.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, Dad.
Sorry about your bumper.